The sterile scent of the clinic, usually a comfort to Isabella today, felt like a tightening noose. She was 7 months pregnant, her belly a swollen testament to a love she thought was shatterproof. Her millionaire husband, Adrian, was late. Again. But when he finally strode in, he wasn't alone. The woman on his arm wasn't a colleague, not a friend. Her perfume screamed defiance, her eyes a predatory gleam. In the hushed, sacred space of her prenatal appointment, Isabella's carefully constructed world was about to detonate. And the doctor. She was about to say something no one saw coming. Isabella Rossi, soon to be. Isabella. Sterling had once believed in fairy tales, not because she was naive, but because her life had for a time mirrored one. She wasn't from Adrian Sterling's world of inherited millions and cutthroat boardrooms. Her parents were Italian immigrants who ran a beloved bustling trattoria in Little Italy, their hands calloused from hard work and their hearts full of simple joys. Isabella had inherited their work ethic and their warmth, graduating top of her class in art history, her dreams initially painted on canvases of curating museums, not navigating the treacherous currents of high society. Then Adrian Sterling had swept into her life a whirlwind of devastating charm and ambition. He was the golden boy of New York finance, his face gracing magazine covers, his Midas touch transforming every venture into pure profit. He'd pursued her relentlessly, showering her with affection, grand gestures, and a seemingly genuine admiration for her different world. He'd loved the food at Rossi's, charmed her parents, and made Isabella feel like the only woman in his universe. He was her anchor, her confidant, her passionate lover. The sprawling penthouse overlooking Central Park, the glittering galas, the private jets. They were thrilling. Yes, but it was Adrian's laughter, his hand in hers, that had truly made her heart soar. Their wedding was the event of the season, a breathtaking affair at the Sterling family's Long Island estate. Isabella, radiant in a custom-designed gown, had felt a tremor of unease. Even then, a fleeting sense of being a pretty bird in a very grand, very gilded cage. But Adrian's whispered vows, his eyes holding hers, had chased the shadows away. The first year was a dizzying blend of passion and adjustment. Isabella learned to navigate the subtle warfare of society hostesses, the insincere smiles, the calculating glances. She tried to maintain her own identity, volunteering at a local art program for underprivileged children, a small act of rebellion against the enforced leisure of her new life. Adrian, initially supportive, soon began to subtly steer her away from it. "It's not safe, darling," or "You should be resting, focusing on us." Then came the pregnancy. It was planned, desired, a new chapter. They were ostensibly thrilled to embark upon. Adrian had been ecstatic, his possessiveness taking on a new, almost reverent quality. He wanted an heir, a continuation of the Sterling legacy, and Isabella was the beautiful vessel to provide it. The nursery was already a marvel of understated luxury, filled with bespoke furniture and hand-stitched toys. They'd chosen names, discussed birthing plans, and Adrian had for a while been the attentive husband she'd first fallen in love with. But as her belly grew, a chasm began to widen between them. Adrian started working later, his excuses flimsier each time. "Closing a big deal, Angel," he'd murmur, his kisses becoming perfunctory, his eyes distant. Hushed phone calls taken in other rooms, the scent of unfamiliar perfume clinging faintly to his bespoke suits. A new, almost cruel edge to his humor when she questioned him. Isabella, hormonal and increasingly anxious, found herself battling a rising tide of suspicion she desperately tried to suppress. She was carrying his child. Their child. He loved her. This was just stress, the pressure of his immense responsibilities. She told herself this 1,000 times a day, the words a hollow mantra against the growing ache in her heart. Her friends, the few she'd managed to keep from her old life, saw the change. Maria, her childhood confidant, had been blunt. "He's treating you like one of his acquisitions, Izzy, not his wife. Be careful." Isabella had defended him fiercely, but Maria's words had planted a seed of doubt that festered. The upcoming doctor's appointment was supposed to be a milestone. It was the 7-month checkup, a detailed scan to ensure the baby was thriving. Adrian had promised to be there, cleared his schedule, or so he said. Wouldn't miss it for the world, Angel. Our little champion needs his CEO present. He'd even joked about it, a rare flash of his old self. Isabella clung to that promise, that flicker of warmth like a drowning woman to a raft. The morning of the appointment dawned gray and oppressive, mirroring Isabella's mood. She dressed carefully, choosing a soft cashmere dress that accommodated her bump, trying to feel beautiful, desirable, not just pregnant. She dabbed on her favorite perfume, a subtle jasmine scent Adrian used to love. She even made his favorite espresso, leaving it on the bedside table, but his side of the bed was already cold, empty. A note scribbled on Sterling Corporation letterhead, "Urgent meeting, will meet you at Dr. Ramirez's. A. No love, no Angel, just A." The familiar knot of anxiety tightened in her stomach. She tried to eat for the baby's sake, but the toast tasted like cardboard. The driver, a stoic man named Thomas, who had been with the Sterlings for years, was waiting for her downstairs, his expression unreadable as he opened the door of the sleek black Bentley. The drive to the Upper East Side Clinic, a place usually associated with joyful anticipation, felt like a journey to her own execution. Dr. Elena Ramirez was one of the best obstetricians in New York, her practice housed in a discreet, elegant brownstone. Her waiting room was usually an oasis of calm, filled with tastefully arranged flowers and soothing classical music. Today it felt different. Isabella checked in, her voice barely a whisper. The receptionist offered a polite professional smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Isabella wondered if her own distress was so obvious, a visible aura of impending doom. She sat, her hands protectively cradling her belly, watching the minutes tick by on the antique grandfather clock in the corner. 10 minutes past the appointment time. 15. Adrian was never this late for something he deemed important. A cold dread began to seep into her bones, far colder than the city air outside. She thought of calling him, but what was the point? He'd either ignore it or offer another clipped, dismissive excuse. 20 minutes. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Maybe he wasn't coming. Maybe this was his way of telling her something too cruel to voice. The thought was a physical blow, stealing her breath. She closed her eyes, fighting back tears, focusing on the tiny flutters within her, the only source of uncomplicated joy left in her life. "It's okay, little one," she thought. "Mommy's here. Mommy will always be here for you." Then the chime of the clinic's entrance bell. Isabella's head snapped up, a wild hope warring with a sickening premonition. Adrian strode in, impeccably dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, his silver tie a slash of arrogance against his crisp white shirt. He looked every inch the powerful, confident millionaire. But he wasn't alone. Clinging to his arm, her fingers possessively intertwined with his, was a woman Isabella had never seen before. She was younger, perhaps in her late 20s, with a mane of fiery red hair cascading over a tight emerald green dress that showcased a figure honed by countless hours at the gym. Her makeup was flawless, her lips painted a defiant blood red. She dripped with diamonds, earrings, a necklace, a bracelet that caught the light with every flick of her wrist. Her perfume, a heavy, musky scent, wafted through the room, an olfactory assault that made Isabella feel instantly nauseous. She looked, Isabella thought, with a detached sense of horror, like the archetypal mistress from a bad soap opera. But this wasn't television. This was her life. Time seemed to slow, to stretch and distort as Isabella stared. The curated calm of Dr. Ramirez's waiting room, with its muted tones and scent of lilies, became the backdrop for a garish, unbelievable scene. Adrian, her husband, the father of her unborn child, stood there, not with an apology for his lateness, but with another woman clinging to his arm as if she were a permanent fixture, a newly acquired trophy. The woman's eyes, a startling cold blue, swept over Isabella, lingering on her swollen belly, with a look that was a complex cocktail of triumph, disdain, and something Isabella couldn't quite decipher, perhaps a flicker of nervousness disguised as defiance. She was undeniably beautiful, in a sharp, predatory way that was the antithesis of Isabella's softer, more classical features. Adrian, for his part, had the audacity to offer a tight, almost businesslike smile, as if this were a perfectly normal occurrence. "Isabella, darling," he began, his voice smooth, betraying no hint of shame. "Sorry, we're a bit late. Traffic was a beast." He gestured vaguely towards the redhead. "This is Celeste. Celeste, this is my wife, Isabella." Celeste. The name sounded as artificial and overly sweet as the cheap perfume she might wear, though Isabella knew with a sinking certainty that this woman's perfume was anything but cheap. Celeste offered a saccharine smile that didn't reach her eyes. "So lovely to finally meet you, Isabella. Adrian has told me so much about you." Her voice was husky, laced with an insinuation that made Isabella's skin crawl. The other occupants of the waiting room, a heavily pregnant woman with her doting husband, an older lady who Isabella presumed was an expectant grandmother, fell into a stunned silence. Conversations died mid-sentence. All eyes were on them, a mixture of shock, pity, and morbid curiosity. Isabella felt a hot flush creep up her neck, her face burning with a humiliation so profound it was almost physical. She couldn't find her voice. Her mind reeled, trying to process the sheer brazen cruelty of it. To bring his mistress here to this place, to this sacred appointment for their child. It was a declaration of war, a calculated act of emotional violence. "Adrian?" She finally managed, her voice trembling, barely audible. "What? What is she doing here?" Adrian sighed, a theatrical display of impatience, as if Isabella were being unnecessarily difficult. "Celeste is here for support, darling. Moral support. For me. It's a stressful day, you know, ensuring everything's all right with the baby." He actually gestured vaguely towards Isabella's stomach, as if it were a slightly inconvenient project he was overseeing. Celeste chimed in, her voice like honey laced with arsenic. "Yes, Isabella. Adrian has been under so much pressure. I just want to be here for him. We're very close." She squeezed his arm, her red nails like talons against his expensive suit. "Close." Isabella repeated the word, tasting like ash in her mouth. The fog of shock was beginning to lift, replaced by a surging wave of icy rage. How dared he? How dared she? "Adrian," Isabella said, her voice gaining a dangerous edge. "I want her to leave. Now." Adrian's smile vanished, replaced by a look of hardening resolve. "Isabella, don't make a scene. Celeste is my guest. She's staying." "A scene?" Isabella's laugh was brittle, humorless. "You bring your horror." The word, so ugly, so uncharacteristic of her, ripped from her throat before she could stop it. "To our child's doctor appointment, and you're worried about me making a scene." Celeste gasped, her eyes flashing. "Well, I never... How dare you call me that? How dare I?" Isabella was on her feet now, though her legs felt shaky. Her protective instincts, primal and fierce, surged through her. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about her baby, about the sanctity of this moment that they were so callously defiling. "Get her out of here, Adrian, or I'm leaving." "Don't be ridiculous, Isabella." Adrian snapped, his voice low and menacing. "You need this checkup. We both need to know everything is on track." He was trying to control her, to manage the situation with the same ruthless efficiency he applied to hostile takeovers. But Isabella wasn't a failing company. She was his wife, a woman on the verge of breaking, or perhaps breaking free. The receptionist, a young woman named Chloe, looked horrified. She picked up the phone, her eyes darting nervously towards the closed door of Dr. Ramirez's office. "Mr. Sterling, Mrs. Sterling, please. This is a medical facility." "He knows it's a medical facility, Chloe," Isabella said, her gaze fixed on Adrian. "He just doesn't seem to care about the well-being of his pregnant wife." Just then the door to Dr. Ramirez's office opened, and the doctor's medical assistant, a kind-faced woman named Sarah, appeared. "Isabella Sterling, Dr. Ramirez is ready for you." Her smile faltered as she took in the tense tableau. Adrian, ever the opportunist, seized the moment. "Excellent, we're coming." He started to usher Celeste forward. "No," Isabella said, standing her ground. "She is not coming in with me." Sarah looked from Isabella's pale, determined face to Adrian's thunderous one, then to Celeste's smug yet slightly unsettled expression. She was clearly out of her depth. Dr. Ramirez is expecting just Mrs. Sterling and her husband. And Ms. Dubois is with me." Adrian stated, his tone leaving no room for argument, or so he thought. He didn't even bother to correct the assumption of Celeste's surname, whatever it might be. Isabella felt a strange calmness settle over her, the eye of the storm. The initial shock and rage had coalesced into a cold, hard resolve. She would not allow this. She would not allow them to tarnish this experience, to cause her child distress before it even took its first breath. "Then I will wait," Isabella said quietly, "until Ms. Dubois decides to find some shred of decency and remove herself. Or, Adrian, you can ask her to leave." Adrian's face was a mask of fury. He was used to getting his way always. His wealth, his power, his charm, they were weapons he wielded with precision, and they rarely failed him. To be defied publicly by his pregnant wife was a scenario he clearly hadn't anticipated. Celeste, perhaps sensing Adrian's resolve wavering, or perhaps emboldened by the attention, spoke up. "Don't be such a prude, Isabella. It's the 21st century. People have modern arrangements." "My arrangement," Isabella said, her voice dripping with ice, "was with my husband. A vow of fidelity. Perhaps you missed that memo when you decided to insert yourself into my marriage and now into my obstetrician's office." The other patients were now openly staring, their earlier pretense of ignoring the drama gone. One woman, the one with the doting husband, actually muttered, "Unbelievable," loud enough for everyone to hear. Her husband put a comforting arm around her, glaring at Adrian. The air was thick with unspoken judgment, with Isabella's raw pain, and with Adrian's simmering rage. It was a powder keg, and the fuse was lit. Isabella braced herself, her hand never leaving her belly. She was fighting for more than just her dignity now. She was fighting for her child. This was the moment before the real storm. The waiting room, designed for quiet anticipation, had become a theater of confrontation, and the next act was about to begin behind the closed doors of Dr. Ramirez's office, where a professional dedicated to bringing life into the world was about to encounter a situation threatening to poison its very beginning. The silence Adrian hoped to maintain was about to be shattered, not by Isabella's anguish alone, but by the calm, authoritative voice of medicine itself. Sarah, the medical assistant, flustered, and clearly wishing the floor would swallow her, stammered, Perhaps I should get Dr. Ramirez." "That won't be necessary," a calm, firm voice interjected. Dr. Elena Ramirez stood in her office doorway, her expression unreadable. She was a woman in her late 50s with intelligent, discerning eyes, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in an elegant chignon. She exuded an air of quiet authority, a professionalism honed over decades of navigating life's most joyous and sometimes most challenging moments. She had seen Isabella through the early stages of her pregnancy, always a beacon of calm reassurance. Her gaze swept over the scene, Isabella pale and trembling but resolute. Adrian, his face a thundercloud of controlled fury, and Celeste an incongruous slash of color and defiance in the serene environment. "Mr. Sterling, Isabella," Dr. Ramirez said, her voice even but with an undercurrent that commanded attention. "My office, please. All three of you." Isabella's heart sank. All three? Was Dr. Ramirez going to allow this mockery to continue? Adrian, however, looked momentarily triumphant, a smirk playing on his lips as he gestured for Celeste to precede him. Celeste, regaining her composure, sashayed past Isabella with a look of undisguised victory. Isabella followed them into the spacious, light-filled consultation room, her steps heavy with dread. The room, usually a place of comfort and trusted advice, felt alien contaminated. There were the familiar anatomical charts on the wall, the state-of-the-art ultrasound machine in the corner, the comfortable patient couch. But the presence of Celeste turned it all into a surreal nightmare. Dr. Ramirez closed the door firmly and indicated the chairs. "Please sit." Adrian and Celeste took the two chairs opposite the doctor's large mahogany desk. Isabella hesitated, then chose a chair slightly apart near the examination table as if needing a physical barrier. Dr. Ramirez seated herself, her hands clasped calmly on the desk. For a moment she simply observed them, her gaze moving from Adrian's arrogant posture to Celeste's poorly concealed smirk, and finally to Isabella's anguished face. The silence stretched thick and uncomfortable. "Mr. Sterling," Dr. Ramirez began, her voice dangerously soft, the kind that brooked no interruption. "Before we discuss Isabella's pregnancy, I feel I must address the unusual circumstances of this visit. Who precisely is this young woman?" She looked directly at Celeste, her gaze unwavering. Adrian leaned back, affecting an air of nonchalance. "This is Celeste Dubois' doctor, a very dear friend. She's here to offer support." "Support for whom, Mr. Sterling?" Dr. Ramirez's voice was still quiet, but it had an edge of steel. "My patient is Isabella. My concern is for her well-being and the well-being of her unborn child. Frankly, her distress is palpable, and I can only surmise that Ms. Dubois's presence is a significant contributing factor." Celeste bristled. "Well, I hardly think." "Ms. Dubois." Dr. Ramirez cut her off, not unkindly, but with absolute finality. "I was speaking to Mr. Sterling, and in my professional capacity, I must state that this environment, this tension you have brought into my consulting room, is medically inadvisable for a woman in her third trimester." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Are you questioning my judgment, doctor?" "I am questioning the wisdom of introducing acute emotional distress to your pregnant wife immediately prior to a medical examination, Mr. Sterling." "Yes." "Doctor." Ramirez's eyes didn't leave his. "I have been an obstetrician at Lenox Hill Hospital for over 25 years. I have delivered thousands of babies, and I can tell you unequivocally that a mother's stress can have profound effects on her pregnancy." Isabella felt a flicker of hope. The doctor wasn't just going to let this slide. "Now," Dr. Ramirez continued, turning slightly towards Isabella, her expression softening with empathy before returning to a professional mien. "Isabella, are you comfortable proceeding with this appointment with Ms. Dubois present?" Isabella looked at Adrian, at Celeste, then back at the doctor. The lie was on the tip of her tongue. The polite society-trained response to smooth things over. But the doctor's directness, her quiet strength, gave Isabella courage. "No, Dr. Ramirez," Isabella said, her voice clear and steady, surprising even herself. "I am not. Her presence here is deeply offensive and incredibly stressful." Adrian slammed his hand on the armrest. "Isabella, this is ridiculous. Celeste is here with me. If she goes, I go." It was a bluff, a power play, and he clearly expected Isabella to back down. "Then perhaps you should both leave, Mr. Sterling," Dr. Ramirez said, her voice dropping a full octave, devoid of any warmth now. "Because I will not proceed with this vital checkup under these conditions. My duty of care is to Isabella and her baby. If you are unable to respect that, then you are a detriment to their health, not a support." The room fell into a shocked silence. Celeste looked aghast. Adrian stared at Dr. Ramirez, his face contorted with disbelief and rage. He was not accustomed to being spoken to this way, to being so thoroughly and professionally shut down. "You can't be serious," Adrian finally sputtered. "Do you know who I am?" Dr. Ramirez leaned forward slightly. "I know you are Adrian Sterling, a man of considerable wealth and influence. I also know that Isabella is your wife, carrying your child. And I know, Mr. Sterling, that stress during pregnancy, particularly chronic and acute stress, is linked to an increased risk of premature birth, low birth weight, and developmental issues. There are numerous studies, some published in highly respected journals, like the New England Journal of Medicine, that substantiate this. Are you telling me your desire to have Ms. Dubois present supersedes your concern for the healthy development of your own child? The doctor's words, delivered with such calm, factual precision, were like a series of well-aimed blows. Adrian visibly deflated his bluster, receding in the face of her unshakable professionalism and irrefutable logic. Celeste looked increasingly uncomfortable, her earlier bravado vanishing. Furthermore, Dr. Ramirez continued, her gaze sweeping over them. This is not just any routine checkup. Today's scan is particularly important. Based on some preliminary flags from the last ultrasound and Isabella's blood work, there are things we need to monitor very closely. She paused, letting her words hang in the air. Then she delivered the next blow, one that shifted the entire dynamic of the room. Isabella, she said, her voice softening with compassion. The reason this appointment is so crucial, and the reason your stress levels are of paramount concern to me right now, is because you are carrying monochorionic, monoamniotic twins. Isabella gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Twins. Momo twins. She vaguely knew the term. Identical twins sharing not only the same placenta, but also the same amniotic sac. She knew it was rare and high risk. Adrian looked stunned. Twins? What are you talking about? We didn't see twins before. It's not always immediately apparent, especially if they are very closely aligned, Dr. Ramirez explained calmly. But the detailed anatomy scan indicators are clear now. Monochorionic, monoamniotic twins, or MOMO twins, are a rare form of twinning occurring in less than 1% of twin pregnancies. It means they share everything, which carries significant risks, including cord entanglement, cord compression, and twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome, though the latter is less common with a single shared sac compared to monochorionic diamniotic twins. This type of pregnancy requires intensive monitoring, frequent ultrasounds, and often hospitalization from around 24 to 28 weeks to monitor the babies continuously. And above all, Isabella needs an environment of absolute calm and unwavering support. Dr. Ramirez looked pointedly at Adrian, then at Celeste. Do you understand the implications of this, Mr. Sterling? The level of dedication, the emotional stability, the peace that Isabella will require. What I am seeing in this room today is the polar opposite of what she and these two vulnerable lives need. Celeste went pale. This was clearly more than she had bargained for. The fantasy of being the cherished mistress flaunted in front of the downtrodden wife was crumbling under the weight of stark medical reality. This wasn't a glamorous power play anymore. It was a life and death situation for two tiny, fragile beings. Adrian was speechless, his face a mixture of shock, fear, and perhaps for the first time a dawning awareness of the magnitude of his actions. The news of twins, especially high-risk twins, seemed to have finally pierced his armor of arrogance. His desire for an heir had just doubled, but so had the stakes, and his appalling behavior was now cast in an even more monstrous light. Dr. Ramirez pressed her advantage, her voice firm but gentle. Ms. Dubois, I must now insist that you leave. Isabella needs to absorb this news, and we need to discuss the path forward without any further distress. Your presence here is untenable. This time there was no argument. Celeste looked at Adrian, perhaps expecting him to defend her, to insist. But Adrian remained silent, his gaze fixed on Dr. Ramirez, then shifting to Isabella's shocked face. He looked like a man who had just been checkmated. Celeste, her face flushed with a mixture of anger and humiliation, stood up abruptly. Without a word, she turned and practically fled the room, the click of her heels on the polished floor a sharp retreating staccato. The heavy scent of her perfume lingered, a faint, unwelcome reminder of the ugliness that had transpired. The door closed behind her. The silence in the room was profound, broken only by Isabella's shaky breath. Dr. Ramirez let out a slow, deliberate sigh. Isabella, my dear, she said softly, let's talk about your babies. The doctor's words had done more than silence Adrian and Celeste. They had reframed the entire narrative. This was no longer just about a millionaire, his wife, and his mistress. This was about the fragile lives of two unborn children and the immense responsibility that now rested on everyone's shoulders, particularly Isabella's. And in that moment, amidst the wreckage of her marriage, Isabella felt a new fierce strength ignite within her. She was a mother of twins, and she would protect them no matter what. The departure of Celeste Dubois left a vacuum in the room, sucking out the toxic tension and leaving behind a fragile, uncertain silence. Adrian sat slumped in his chair, the picture of a deflated tycoon. The news of Momo twins, coupled with Dr. Ramirez's unwavering condemnation of his behavior, had stripped him of his usual arrogance. He looked smaller, his expensive suit suddenly ill-fitting his confident aura, replaced by a stunned, almost bewildered expression. Isabella, however, felt a strange surge of adrenaline. Twins. Two babies. Two heartbeats she was now fiercely determined to protect. The shock was immense, terrifying even, but beneath it a primal resolve was taking root. Dr. Ramirez's words had not only validated her pain, but had also armed her with a purpose that transcended the humiliation Adrian had inflicted. Dr. Ramirez, with remarkable sensitivity, turned her full attention to Isabella. She explained in detail the nature of Momo twins, the potential complications, and the rigorous monitoring plan that would be necessary. We'll need to see you at least twice a week for ultrasounds to monitor for cord entanglement and to check the baby's growth and well-being. I'll also want to consult with a maternal fetal medicine specialist at Lenox Hill to co-manage your care. And Isabella, she said gently but firmly, we typically recommend inpatient hospital care starting between 24 and 28 weeks for continuous fetal monitoring. This allows for an immediate C-section if any distress is detected. You are currently at 28 weeks. The implications were staggering. Weeks, possibly months in a hospital. Constant worry. But also a clear path forward, a regimen focused entirely on the survival and health of her children. Adrian finally spoke, his voice raspy, unfamiliar. Hospitalization for how long? Potentially until delivery, Mr. Sterling. Dr. Ramirez replied, her tone neutral. Which we would ideally aim for between 32 and 34 weeks via C-section once lung maturity is confirmed to minimize the risks associated with prolonged cord entanglement. Every day longer is a gift, but also a risk we must carefully manage. She turned back to Isabella. This will be challenging, Isabella. You will need a tremendous amount of support, peace, and positivity around you. Her gaze flickered meaningfully towards Adrian. Isabella met Adrian's eyes. They were filled with a confusing mix of emotions, fear, remorse, and perhaps a dawning understanding of the chasm he had created. But it was too little, too late. The image of him walking in with Celeste, the casual cruelty of it, was seared into her mind. I understand, Doctor, Isabella said, her voice surprisingly steady. I'll do whatever it takes for my babies. The rest of the appointment proceeded with a surreal focus on medical details. The ultrasound, usually a moment of shared joy, was now fraught with anxiety and a strange new wonder. Seeing two tiny forms on the screen, two flickering heartbeats, brought tears to Isabella's eyes. Tears of fear, yes, but also of overwhelming love and determination. Adrian watched silent and ashen-faced. Dr. Ramirez pointed out their proximity, the shared sac, explaining how their umbilical cords could, if they weren't lucky, become entangled. The visual underscored the precariousness of their situation. When it was over, Dr. Ramirez gave Isabella a list of resources, specialist referrals, and scheduled her next appointment. Isabella, she said, taking her hand, you are stronger than you think. We will get through this together. Focus on yourself and these precious lives. Nothing else matters right now. Outside the consultation room, the waiting area was now empty. The earlier audience to their drama dispersed. The air still felt heavy. Adrian trailed Isabella out a lost shadow. As they reached the clinic's exit, he reached for her arm. Isabella, I am so sorry. I had no idea about the twins, about how serious. Isabella pulled her arm away. her touch recoiling as if from a burn. "You're sorry?" she asked, her voice low and filled with a cold fury that surprised even herself. "Are you sorry for bringing her here? Or are you just sorry you got caught, that your grand performance was upstaged by a medical diagnosis?" "No, it's not like that," he stammered, looking genuinely distressed. "Celeste. It was a mistake, a terrible lapse in judgment. I was stressed, things at work." "Save it, Adrian," Isabella said, weariness lacing her tone. "Your excuses mean nothing to me now. The only things that matter are in here." She placed a hand protectively on her belly. "And they need me to be strong and calm, something I can't be if you're anywhere near me." "Isabella, please," he begged, his voice cracking. "Let me help. I want to be there for you, for them." "You want to be there?" She gave a bitter laugh. "You had your chance to be there, Adrian. You chose to bring your mistress instead. That choice has consequences." Without another word, she turned and walked towards the waiting Bentley, leaving Adrian standing on the sidewalk, a solitary, diminished figure. Thomas, the driver, held the door open for her, his expression carefully neutral. But Isabella thought she detected a flicker of sympathy in his eyes. The journey back to the penthouse was a blur. Isabella's mind raced, processing the diagnosis, Adrian's betrayal, the uncertain future. Once inside the opulent apartment that now felt like a beautifully decorated prison, she went straight to the nursery. It was perfect, serene, filled with soft creams and blues, waiting for one baby. Now there would be two. She sank into the rocking chair, tears finally flowing freely. Tears of grief for her shattered marriage, tears of fear for her babies, and tears of a burgeoning, fierce maternal love. The next few days were a whirlwind. Isabella contacted the maternal fetal medicine specialist. Dr. Ramirez had recommended Dr. Chen at Lenox Hill Hospital. She informed her parents, who were shocked and furious at Adrian, but immediately rallied, promising their unwavering support. Maria, her best friend, was a rock, helping her pack a hospital bag, researching Momo twin support groups, and just listening. Adrian tried to reach her repeatedly. Calls, texts, emails, even a handwritten letter delivered by a bewildered messenger. Isabella ignored them all. She instructed her lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Vivian Chow, to initiate divorce proceedings. The grounds were clear. News of the Sterling drama, though initially contained within the clinic, began to seep out. Whispers in high society, blind items in gossip columns. Adrian's carefully cultivated image was taking a beating. The story of a millionaire bringing his mistress to his pregnant wife's doctor appointment, especially when the wife was subsequently revealed to be carrying high-risk twins, was too scandalous, too deliciously awful to stay quiet for long. There were rumors of board members at Sterling Corporation expressing concern over their CEO's erratic personal life. Celeste Dubois, meanwhile, had vanished from the scene. Perhaps the reality of Adrian's complicated life, the impending arrival of not one but two babies, requiring immense care, and the public humiliation had been too much. Or perhaps Adrian, in a belated attempt at damage control, had cut her loose. Whatever the reason, she was gone, a fleeting, destructive comet. A week after the disastrous appointment, Isabella was admitted to Lenox Hill Hospital for continuous monitoring. The sterile environment of the hospital room, with its beeping machines and constant checks, was initially daunting. But there was also a sense of security, of being in the best possible place for her babies. Dr. Chen and her team were exceptional, explaining every procedure, every scan result with patience and compassion. Adrian, looking haggard and desperate, appeared at the hospital. He'd managed to find out her room number. He brought an enormous bouquet of flowers, which Isabella promptly asked a nurse to donate to the general ward. "Isabella, please talk to me," he pleaded, standing awkwardly in the doorway. "There's nothing to say, Adrian," she said, her voice tired but firm. "I'm focusing on the babies. You should focus on your life, whatever that entails now." "You are my life. The babies are my life," he insisted. "We were," Isabella corrected him. "Until you decided we weren't enough. Until you decided to humiliate me in the most public and painful way possible." His face fell. I know I messed up Izzy, irreparably. But let me try to make amends. Let me support you support them. I'll do anything. Isabella looked at him. This man she had once loved so fiercely. This man who was the father of her children. She saw the desperation in his eyes, the genuine remorse. But she also saw the narcissism, the self-interest that had allowed him to betray her so profoundly. Trust once shattered was not so easily pieced back together. The best way you can support us right now, Adrian, she said quietly, is to sign the divorce papers and ensure that the trust funds for the children are established without any complications. Beyond that, your presence here is stressful for me, and stress is the one thing I cannot afford. His shoulders sagged. He knew she was right. His actions had consequences, and one of them was this unbridgeable distance between them. He nodded slowly, defeated. All right, Isabella, if that's what you want. He placed a small velvet box on her bedside table. I bought this for the baby before I knew. Maybe for one of them. He turned and left the scent of his expensive cologne a ghostly reminder of a life that no longer existed. Isabella waited until he was gone before looking in the box. Inside, nestled on a satin cushion, was a tiny, exquisite diamond-studded bracelet. It was beautiful, expensive, and utterly meaningless now. She closed the box. Her babies wouldn't need diamonds. They would need love, security, and a mother who was whole and strong. The days turned into weeks. Isabella immersed herself in learning everything she could about Momo twins. She connected online with other mothers who had gone through similar experiences, finding solace and strength in their shared journeys. Her parents visited daily, bringing food from the trattoria, filling her room with the comforting aroma of home. Maria was a constant presence, a cheerful distraction. The monitoring was intensive. Ultrasounds every few hours, non-stress tests, the constant hum and beep of the fetal heart monitors. There were scares moments when one baby's heart rate would dip, sending nurses rushing in. But each time they stabilized. Her tiny fighters. Through it all, Isabella discovered a resilience she never knew she possessed. The gilded cage had been shattered, but in its place she was forging an armor of maternal love and steely determination. She was no longer just Isabella Sterling, the millionaire's wife. She was Isabella Rossi, mother of twins, a warrior preparing for the most important battle of her life. The drama Adrian had orchestrated had backfired spectacularly, not only tarnishing his own empire, but also inadvertently paving the way for Isabella's quiet, powerful ascent. The morning of the C-section arrived a stark clinical dawn that felt worlds away from the soft, romantic sunrises Isabella once cherished. She was at 33 weeks and 4 days gestation, a hard-won milestone that she, her medical team, and her tiny, tenacious daughters had fought for with every passing hour. Each beep of the fetal monitor, each reassuring scan, had been a victory against the odds that Adrian's callousness had so nearly jeopardized. In the preoperative room, the air was thick with a unique blend of acute anxiety and profound anticipation. Dr. Ramirez and Dr. Chen, the formidable duo who had become her staunchest allies, were present, their calm competence a comforting balm on Isabella's frayed nerves. Her parents stood by, their faces etched with a generation's worth of worry, but their eyes shining with an immense pride in their daughter's resilience. Maria, her ever-faithful friend, squeezed her hand, whispering last-minute words of encouragement that were both silly and profoundly grounding. Notably absent was Adrian. In one of her final firm decisions, as his wife Isabella had made her wishes unequivocally clear through her lawyer. He would be informed the moment the babies were safely delivered. He would in time be granted access as determined by the courts, but his presence on this day in the operating room or even pacing the hallway was forbidden. The emotional toll was a risk she refused to take. Her daughter's safe arrival was the only priority. To her surprise, he had respected her wishes without a fight, his lawyer communicating only his acceptance and his fervent, desperate hopes for a safe delivery. Perhaps the weeks of stark silence staring at the empire he had tarnished and the family he had broken had finally forced a measure of introspection. The surgery itself was a surreal experience, a blur of blue scrubs, bright lights, and the strangely detached sensation of pressure and movement behind the sterile drape. Isabella focused on her breathing, on the calm, steady voice of the anesthesiologist, on the image of two perfect, healthy babies she had held in her mind for weeks. She willed them into the world with every ounce of her being. And then it happened. A small, indignant cry sliced through the clinical tension of the room, strong and clear. It was followed a breathtaking moment later by a second, equally robust cry. "Congratulations, Isabella!" Dr. Chen's voice rang out bright with triumph over her surgical mask. "You have two beautiful, healthy baby girls, two daughters." The word was a balm, a promise. Tears Isabella hadn't realized she was holding back streamed down her temples. Tears of overwhelming relief and a love so immense it felt as if her heart, so recently shattered, might now burst from fullness. The neonatal team, a flurry of efficient compassion, whisked them to the warming station, calling out APGAR scores that were surprisingly good. They were small, delicate, but they were breathing on their own. Before they were taken to the NICU for observation, a nurse brought them to her, one bundled in each arm for a fleeting moment. Isabella saw two perfect miniature faces, tufts of dark hair like her own, and impossibly tiny fingers that curled instinctively. They were Luna and Stella, the moon and the star, her twin lights in the profound darkness she had navigated. Recovery was an uphill climb, but Isabella was fueled by a singular, powerful focus, her daughters. She spent every possible moment in the hushed, beeping world of the NICU. There she held them skin to skin, feeling their fragile warmth against her chest, whispering stories of the world that awaited them, marveling at their perfection. They were fighters, these girls, enduring the pokes and prods of the NICU with a resilience that mirrored her own. A silent, unspoken agreement brokered by the discreet nursing staff dictated Adrian's visits. He came only when Isabella was not scheduled to be there, a ghost in the narrative of his daughter's first days. The nurses, with gentle pity, told her he would simply stand beside their incubators for an hour at a time, watching them breathe his expression, a mask of awe, regret, and profound sadness. He never tried to approach her. Meanwhile, the empire Adrian had prized above all else continued to feel the aftershocks of his actions. The divorce proceeded with quiet, ruthless efficiency, with Vivian Chow ensuring that Isabella and the twins would be financially secure for life. But more than money, Isabella had won her freedom. The whispers about Adrian's character had solidified into a damning consensus in their social and professional circles. Adrian Sterling was a brilliant deal-maker, but a morally bankrupt man. His board of directors, deeply concerned about the reputational damage and the instability it signaled, had begun formal discussions about a leadership transition. The iron grip he once wielded over his corporate world was irrevocably slipping. Celeste Dubois had vanished, a footnote in a scandal she had helped create. Rumors swirled that she had left New York, her ambitions of a Sterling-funded life thwarted her own reputation in tatters. She had sought the spotlight by Adrian's side, but its glare had ultimately exposed and consumed her. Before Isabella and the twins were finally discharged, Dr. Ramirez paid them a visit. "You did wonderfully, Isabella," she said, her smile both proud and genuine. "They are miracles, all three of you." "Thank you, doctor," Isabella replied, her voice thick with unshed tears. "For everything. For your honesty that day. For your strength. You didn't just save my babies. You saved me." Dr. Ramirez placed a hand on her arm. "It was my privilege. Remember the calm you fought so hard to find in the midst of that storm. That's your superpower now. They will thrive on it." Going home was a new beginning. The opulent penthouse, once a symbol of her gilded cage, began its transformation into a home. Her parents moved in temporarily, filling the vast, silent spaces with the comforting aromas of the trattoria and the easy laughter of family. Maria was a constant, cheerful presence, a co-general in the war against diaper changes and sleep deprivation. Slowly, a new rhythm emerged, dictated not by social calendars, but by feeding schedules, soft gurgles, and the quiet hum of a sterilizer on a marble countertop. Isabella never forgot the wound of Adrian's betrayal. It was a scar on her heart, a permanent reminder of a love that had soured into unthinkable cruelty. But as she looked at the innocent faces of Luna and Stella, she found it increasingly difficult to actively hold on to the bitterness. Her energy was wholly consumed by love, by the overwhelming demands and the exquisite heart-stopping joys of motherhood. Eventually, Adrian began to play a small, carefully managed role in his daughters' lives. The visits started as supervised hours in the penthouse, then graduated to short walks in the park. He was clumsy and awkward at first, a man accustomed to commanding boardrooms, now fumbling with blankets and bottles, clearly wrestling with both his deepest joy and his deepest shame. Isabella watched him, always guarded, but also with a sliver of hope, not for herself, but for her girls, that he could in time become the father they deserved. The doctor's diagnosis had in a single moment silenced a callous husband and his arrogant mistress. But its true power was in what it awakened in Isabella. It set in motion the dismantling of a toxic marriage and the quiet crumbling of a ruthless man's power, but also the miraculous defiant arrival of two new lives. Isabella had entered that clinic a victim, a wife betrayed. She had walked out the architect of her own future, a warrior forged in the fire. Her wealth was no longer measured in stocks or diamonds, but in the immeasurable, unconditional love she felt for Luna and Stella, and the quiet, unshakable strength she had finally found within herself. The drama was over, but her story, their story, was just beginning. And so Isabella's world, once shattered by betrayal, was rebuilt on a foundation of fierce maternal love and unexpected strength. The doctor's words didn't just silence a callous husband and his mistress. They ignited a spark in Isabella, empowering her to reclaim her life and protect the precious future of her twin daughters, Luna and Stella. Adrian's empire of arrogance faced its own quiet reckoning, a stark reminder that true wealth isn't about power, but about integrity. What did you think of Isabella's journey and Dr. Ramirez's powerful intervention? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story of resilience and unexpected twists resonated with you, please give this video a thumbs up. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to subscribe for more dramatic tales that explore the complexities of life and the strength of the human spirit. Click that notification bell so you never miss an upload.